Educational and career statistics continue to demonstrate that women of color are underrepresented in computing. I could show you lots of statistics, but it's been well known and well documented. And so people who research this problem, like myself, often think about educational interventions that can occur earlier in their educational trajectory, so before college. So this can mean like K through 12 interventions. And a lot of those interventions focus on developing learners' technical skills or their computing knowledge. And this is so, you can positively affect something called your computing identity, which is whether you view yourself as someone who can contribute to and participate and succeed in computing. While this is a totally worthwhile endeavor, it's not what I specialize in. But so what I look at is what happens when you overly focus the efforts to broaden participation in computing by focusing on just sort of technical and academic performance, and what happens when you have a focus like that might overlook the social cultural barriers, which I argue are just as important as the academic and performance-based barriers. And these are things like racialized and gendered stereotypes about girls of color, their academic performance, their interests, and their supports, like family supports. And so what I want to investigate in my career is how you can combat the internalization of these negative stereotypes so that they don't function as a barrier, and how you can develop positive disciplinary identity formations. And I know that not everyone here studies identity or uses identity as an analytic, so I do have like an asterisk definition of what I mean by identity formation. And so this is really a socialized process where a learner participates in a discipline like computing, and they internalize the norms, the practices, and the beliefs and values, including beliefs around who can succeed in that discipline. And so what I want to do is expand narrow performance-based computing identity models by fostering feelings of agency along with the feelings of competency. So what do I mean by agency? What I mean by that is one's belief in their ability to initiate and sustain both collective and individual change, either in their lives or in their communities. And so I want to provide girls of color experiences that allow them to really investigate what role computing can play in agency, in developing their own agency, and in creating either individual or collective change. And as part of agency, it's not only what they can do for others, but also figuring out what computing can mean to them personally and how it's going to impact their future life trajectories, whether that's career or educational. And so this is what I propose to the NSF as my definition of an agentic computing identity. So it's the ability to view oneself as an active participant in computing with the knowledge and skills to enact social change and control future life trajectories. Everything I just said in a nutshell. And because I was proposing this definition, I wanted to propose what a model for that agentic computing identity could look like. And so I proposed these constructs, which are self-efficacy, competency, recognition, interest, and agency. So this is what I'm arguing is if you sort of create a program that can foster these different beliefs and feelings in girls of color, these can produce or help develop what I'm calling the agentic computing identity. And so self-efficacy, I'm just going to really briefly go through them, is your belief in your ability to accomplish a task. It's pretty task specific. Your competency, so this is more of your broad belief over time about how the strength of your computing skills. Recognition, whether you see yourself or whether you believe that others, like your peers and your teachers, see you as a computing person. Your interest, if you're not interested, you're not gonna wanna participate. And of course, this last thing that I'm adding, which is your agency. So your ability to decide what role computing will play in your life and how you can use computing for change. And so I have a lot of sub-questions, but generally high-level question is how can informal computing programs support girls of color in developing agentic computing identities? Okay, I only have one more slide, so this is good. It's a lot, but I'm not gonna talk about it all. So this is just in a snapshot, the design of it. It is a collaborative design-based research. I'm designing an informal computing program. It's a 5-year collaboration with public libraries in Texas and Michigan. and we're going to engage 150 girls, which are ages 13 through 17. And we're using specifically, because our focus is on agency, a computational justice model. And so I'm bringing in together both computing and sort of social science topics. And the way I'm conceptualizing computational justice is really any critical investigation of how technical interventions can be tools, so not necessarily the solution, but tools to address fundamental problems in society of justice and equity. And because it's not just about this sort of approach, it's also about what they're going to learn. They're going to learn that through an introductory knowledge to how to create cyber-physical systems. So they're going to look at how cyber-physical systems differentially impact communities, including their own communities. And so that's sort of bringing together this idea of change, individual and collective, with computing skills. And we're just going to measure whether those constructs actually matter and how they relate to each other, whether the girls are actually learning the cyber-physical system content knowledge, and whether the programs are even sustainable at all in public libraries. That's it. Thank you.